Government of National Unity. How has it been?
One of the first interviews I did, I described it like walking into a burning house with a bucket of water. There are some people who would like the GNU to fail so they can go back to regular programming, which is, take as much as you can, as quickly as you can. The ANC had a majority in 1994. They don't have one now. People need to learn to collaborate.
Yes.
We will give it absolutely everything, but we need partners that are as committed as we are to A, the government, and B, the country.
Guys, we have the Minister of Public Works, Dean Macpherson, with us here today. Dean, such a pleasure to have you.
Yes.
It's going to be an interesting conversation.
Good to be here with you, and it's quite bizarre that it takes a podcast for me to see you.
Oh, just look at that.
And you obviously in Gauteng, so I don't get to see you enough, and you're in the council causing chaos there.
Yeah.
So it's great to be here.
Yeah, so Dean, tell us about yourself. Tell us how you started in politics, what made you want to join politics. Luyolo and I were speaking, we joined when we were at university. I think I was 19 years old, and I joined the DA student organization because even as a young person, I knew that we have to get into the ring if we want to save South Africa and if we want to do something about it. So tell us about your story.
Well, when I joined the DA 23 years ago, I was 17, and there wasn't even something called Young Leaders. It was called Young Guns then, which sounded like a rap album or something like that. But that's what it was called. And actually, interestingly, when I first applied to be on what was then called the Young Guns, I was rejected 3 times.
Wow.
So I've actually never been through the DA Youth Leaders program, which is fine. And then I was elected as a councillor in 2009. So actually 16 years ago was the by-election that I was first elected in.
Wow, amazing.
So it's, I've spent quite a significant period of my 40-year life in politics. I'm a member of one party, and I've dedicated a large portion of my life now to serving the public, serving the DA, and getting things done. And I never thought, as a young man at the age of 24, when I was first elected as a councillor, that I'd be in national government. And that's the pinnacle of any politician's career. So here I am, fast forward, and things are worked out pretty differently from when I first joined the party all that time ago.
So I'm keen to know though, if it wasn't politics, Dean, and I think it's very similar, and we'll talk about it later. But if it wasn't politics, what was it going to be?
I think I would have made a really good lawyer, actually, because I like to argue immensely.
You could have fooled us all here this morning.
And I like to get to the bottom of things, which we'll get into a little bit later. Well, I also would like to have been a doctor. My mum was a nurse, and I remember as a kid I used to read these nursing journals of hers. The only problem is that while I enjoy watching things like Grey's Anatomy and so on and so forth, but when I actually see blood, it's another story. So I am on the floor. So that wouldn't have worked out. So I've also, it's a well-known point that I've been in business for a long time before I joined politics. So I'm interested in a lot of things. And I still read a lot on, new innovation in business and finance and real estate and that sort of thing. So, politics is not the be-all and end-all. And what I am absolutely convinced of is my working career won't end in politics. So I've got some other ideas in life that I'll get to later on. So,
Yeah, lekker.
So Dean, I just, I'm asking for the people out there, especially young people. I mean, many of us would want to know, how is it to be a minister? I mean, it must be such a crazy, crazy job. I mean, if you had to just explain to someone, how is it just to be a minister?
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I have never worked so hard, and I've worked really hard before becoming a minister. I'm the first one to be in the office, and I'm the last one to leave, and that's normally sort of 7 to 7, 7 to 8, 9 p.m. at times. I spend a lot of time traveling. I spend a lot of time away from my family, it's very stressful. But I will say this, that it is the greatest honor that I've ever had in my life. I don't think that there's any greater honor than serving your country and, you know, making a difference. And, you know, that can be done in, you know, when you have executive authority to do so. So I don't take that responsibility lightly. That's why I work so hard. You know, sometimes we can go for 2-3 weeks without a single day's break. And luckily I got a great team behind me, because you can't do this thing on your own. But it's a huge honor, and you know, I don't think we should ever take it for granted, and that's why we do the work that we do, because we're doing it on behalf of South Africa.
Exactly.
We're not doing it for ourselves.
I'll tell you, what Dean says, it's so critical. I grew up in a political home, very much the same as Dean did. And I watched for years growing up where my old man wasn't there for the Saturday rugby match, where he left in the morning before we woke up, and he got home at night while we were asleep. Yet that still dragged me into politics as well. But what it was servant leadership. And so sometimes people don't understand that, because they see you on TV, they see you in interviews, and they think it's just the glitz and the glam of the cameras. It's actually not. This job, and as Dean says, requires so much of you. And if you don't have a servant leadership heart, if you don't have a heart for people, irrespective of what your skills are, you know, irrespective of Dean wanting to be a lawyer or a doctor or a nurse or a doctor, if you don't have a heart for people, then you should just rather forget about doing this job. This job requires more than just skill. It requires a heart.
Yeah, and sacrifice, right?
And a thick skin, by the way, because it's not nice when you see your name being put on the front page when you're doing something right, but people who are standing to lose a lot are then, you know, offering money to journalists or, you know, planting stories to try and trash your name and to try and distract. So you've got to have a thick skin, because, you know, being called corrupt and being called, you know, this and that, and, you know, fake news and fake allegations and, you know, altered voice notes that they made of me, you know, alleging all sorts of ridiculous things. That's tough. And, you know, when your family sees that, you've got to explain that to them. You've got to explain that to your friends. So, you know, you know, your pride can take a dent.
Oh, for sure. I just want to go back a little bit. You know, you spoke about your family not seeing you enough, and we spoke about, Angus, you spoke about your dad. And, you know, there's a level of sacrifice you have to make, and your family has to make as well. And I know I struggle with this, and maybe you guys struggle with it, but, you know, you have people, I haven't seen you in so long. You know, your relationships, how do you find balance? It's been a year. How have you found that balance yet?
So, I mean, I'm very close to my father, and I make a habit of, you know, every time I'm in Durban, because that's where I'm from, I'm the chairperson of the DA in KwaZulu-Natal. So every Monday is a political day for me in KZN. I will go there, see him. We'll either have breakfast or we'll have a dinner. And you've got to be intentional about that. You've got to be intentional about seeing your friends and, you know, knowing that actually there's a life outside of politics. So, you know, I enjoy going to friends for dinner, or we walk the dogs on a Saturday or something like that. And then, of course, having, you know, someone at home also. You know, I have a wonderful partner who supports me incredibly. And, you know, having that stability is critical. But you've always got to put that first. So I will work hard, and we have to make sacrifices to do that job. But nothing will come in front of my family or my relationships, because those things are the things that will be there when you're not in office anymore. So you've always got to put your family and friends first ahead of the job.
I can't agree with you. Yeah, absolutely, I can't agree. Your family is the one that carries you. Your family is the one that sometimes takes more flack than what you take, because your mother has her own set of friends, your wife partners got their own set of friends, and they face the abuse that you, because of the work you're doing. And so we had this thing in our home, and no matter where they were, on a Friday night, was family night.
Yes.
And back in those days, you never had DVD players. So my old man would go to the video store down the road. He'd rent the VHS machine and the VHS disc, and we watched Police Academy 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But that was a good one. But that small gesture, and I've done it. So I've got it with my boys now, right? They know Friday night, I don't care where you are, you'll be at home because I've not seen you much this week.
But a Friday night, Angus.
It's a Friday night.
Friday nights are for jolling.
Not when you're our age.
Yeah.
So,
is it? What does that mean?
Thanks,
Angus and I are probably closer to age than you. So a Friday night for me is my slippers, fireplace on, watching a Netflix, and then going to bed at like 9:30. That's
40 is the new 30.
Are we living the same life?
Let me tell you what, the last year has aged me like 10 years.
Sure.
So, like, nothing is more fun than actually going to bed at 9 o'clock.
It's the best.
That is it for me.
It's the best.
But Dean, picking up on what Angus is saying, what are you actually watching right now? What's a series or a movie that you can plug some of the people watching?
So I'm not a great a TV person. Right. So I don't. I don't watch TV that often. Because, I get home quite late every night, and I think the worst thing that you can do is watch TV, and then I can't sleep. So I try and read. I'm reading the new book about Joe Biden by Jake Tapper, the Original Sin, sort of what went wrong there. But I do like an amazing series on Netflix. Particularly a British one. So I've just finished watching something called Department Q on Netflix. It's unbelievable. It is so thrilling. I mean, you actually can't put it down. So, and when I start watching something like that, I just get it done and go through the whole thing.
Binge watch.
So I do that, but I don't really watch. I don't watch the news or anything like that. I just read, I read online. So I'm not a great or big TV person. I've never really been, to be honest.
Can I ask you, because I guess there's something we'll struggle with. Do you ever, other than when you've passed out, sleeping, put your phone down?
Yes, I do.
So you do. It's a struggle.
And actually, I only found this out like a year ago because I'm not the greatest tech person, to be honest. So, I'm not that really clued up. And someone showed me how to activate a sleep mode on my iPhone.
When did you find this out?
Only this out last year.
So, is that Do Not Disturb?
Yeah, I only found that out last year. No,
so could you send me the link on how to do this as well?
So I only found this out last year, and let me tell you what, boy, what a game changer that's been.
Yes.
So sort of 9 o'clock, my phone goes off.
Correct.
It's not. It's still on, but I can't see any messages come through, and then it comes back on at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Correct. Yes.
But I don't know. Someone had to show me how to do that. I'm not that great.
Yeah.
Do you guys mind showing me how to do this?
Yes.
I'll show you.
Do not disturb. You don't get messages.
But
you don't
there's
get
more
anything.
now. There's more than
great.
just do not disturb. There's do not disturb, and then there's sleep mode, and then there's no interruption mode.
No, I've got those ones
So it's
now.
got all different types of modes.
So that's important because I've got one number only. But my folks are elderly, right? So I can't not answer my phone or not have it.
They can ring it, so they can get through that. Yeah.
Yes.
Please, we'll chat about it after the show.
Talking about one number, my number has not changed since I was 14 years old. So it's the same number for 26 years.
Same about
And you could choose those days the last 4 digits of your telephone number.
Wow.
And mine are my birthday. So you could actually, so you can actually, so you could do that. So I mean that just shows you how long I've had the same number
there we
for.
go.
Yeah, that
Although
is
I'm not
cool.
going to give it out. Although half of South Africa has it anyway.
Everyone's got it.
But Dean, I just, I really, when I ask these questions, I'm thinking of, people that I sit with on a daily basis who at times wonder, public works, when we talk about public works, and I think we hear it all the time in the news. It's something that we know it's very important, but what exactly is public works?
It's a good question. I think for a long time, public works, has been a massive problem in South Africa. I mean, this is where Cllr originated out of, was public works. And public works is a massive beast. It owns all of the government's buildings. It owns 5 million hectares of land.
Sure.
And then it is charged with actually maintaining that building, that land, providing accommodation for clients, different departments, and providing that accommodation. And, effectively, it is the single largest landlord and property owner in the country. And instead of it being run like a asset management business, it's been run as a business for individuals.
Yeah.
And for a long time, Public Works has just degraded year after year after year because it has been misused for individual purposes and not for the purposes of public good. And that's why one of the things we've said, Luyolo, is that we want to make public assets about public good.
Yeah.
Because, in so many communities, you have these public assets that are lying derelict. Angus, you all know as a councillor, then they attract crime and all sorts of problems for communities. And so we've really tried to actually say, we want to move Public Works from being the Department of Bad Buildings into an economic delivery unit so that it delivers value for money for the state, that it drives economic growth and jobs. And then obviously we have the infrastructure side of the portfolio, which is charged with coordinating and planning all major infrastructure projects in the country. We do not build roads, we don't build bridges, waterways, all that. We just work with those line departments to package those projects together. We're now trying to push that space out and help municipalities and get more involved in project execution. But that's sort of long-term work in progress. So, if you had to ask me if which portfolio I would have chosen, I wouldn't have chosen Public Works just because it's got such a dreadful reputation. And just in 1 year, if you look at public sentiment to Public Works, it's drastically changed. And that's not my opinion, but that was some polling that was done, I think, by Brenthurst, which showed that 44% of South Africans have a positive view now of Public Works.
Wow.
So that has really shifted from being something that is just appalling to one of the top 10 sentiment polled departments in the country. And that's important for us because people can start to see that actually Public Works can be an asset, not a liability for the country.
So it's interesting because I'm sure, Dean, without Public Works, this government doesn't function. The country as a state doesn't function because for the state to function, it needs Public Works to function. So if one had to sort of really break it down and get down to the nitty-gritty, the person on the street, how does Public Works, in your opinion, from what it was before you got hold of it to now, how does it benefit that person in the street?
Well, what we want to do is we want to use our public assets for public good. So we want to start saying those buildings and land that we don't use or we don't need, how can we gear that towards being used for social housing?
Absolutely.
Wow.
How can we use that, to drive economic development, to build new infrastructure? How can we reform the EPWP program, which you all know is, really, bedeviled, with corruption, with misuse, and all sorts of other things that go on there, to make sure that we create a pipeline of skills for people to find long-term employment. We are really looking at this in a completely different way. So we're saying, how do we actually take all of the assets that we own and how do we start generating income for those, like a property group would? I mean, that's how we should be running as a property group that generates income every month and that then can be used to build social infrastructure, schools and clinics and hospitals and police stations.
Yeah.
That's how we view it. And just as an example, by the way, we said, let's test to see what the private sector thinks. So we took 31 properties. Their value is 1.4 billion rand. So that's their book value. We've said what we will do is we will put that into the public space at zero cost.
Wow.
So you can bid on those properties, but we will award the bid on best use case. So we will look at it and we'll say, okay, I tell you what, Angus, we are going to award this to you because you want to invest X amount of money, create X amount of jobs, etc., etc. 31 properties, 1.4 billion. We will attract 10 billion rand worth of private sector development.
Wow.
So we've nearly leveraged our contribution tenfold.
Tenfold, yeah.
Wow.
And we're going to create 40,000 construction jobs, we estimate in that, and 100,000 service-related jobs, just in those 31 properties.
Wow.
So pull that out, many more times, and that's the kind of value that we think we can unlock. My estimation, if you had to really package this thing properly and do it, you could attract 250 billion rand, 250 billion rand worth of new investment into government real estate if you package it properly. And that is actually what we are doing and currently busy with at the moment.
I love the fact that you're speaking about how public works, not only looking at property, but creating jobs and contributing to the economy, because I think everyday people are struggling simply because they just can't find a job, or entrepreneurs, people in the township, the township economy, they just don't have any space to practice out of. I mean, if you look in Soweto and in other areas, young entrepreneurs who have incredible ideas, they initiative, they've got these plans, they just don't have anywhere to work out of. And so I think when you speak about the economic growth and the job creations, I think that is so important and so necessary.
But there's also a social value to this, Nazley. Don't forget that, because not everything that we have should be must be used for economic purposes. And that's why it was so fascinating to me that when we looked at what could our contribution be in the fight against gender-based violence. And in 20 years, we had only released one property in the whole country to be used as a shelter or a care home, to assist victims or people who want to get away from gender-based violence. Just in 1 month, we handed over 15.
Amazing.
So when you start to just apply your mind and say, that these are not our buildings. This belongs to the public. It belongs to the state. How do we put that into, public value? And just in 1 month, we handed over 15 new properties to be used in the fight against gender-based violence. And we've got another one coming up in Malmesbury soon that we'll be handing over. And that's about, we own 1,000 residential houses across this country. I've said to the team, they said, we should sell them. I said, no. What we're going to do is we are going to package those to make sure that teachers, nurses, police officers, they can get an opportunity to buy those houses at a discounted rate so that we incentivize people to come into the public service and serve their country as well. Because these people want to live in the communities that they serve, but they can't.
Important.
So we're actually going to make 1,000 houses available across this country to teachers, nurses, and police officers.
Feels like breaking news.
It's amazing. It is actually
breaking news.
I'm gonna get in trouble when I get back to the office about that one.
But this is why I asked the question. This is exactly why I asked the question. Public works for the layman in the street. That's what it's all about. This is what it should have been all about. You look at something, and a critical need in this country is housing. Is housing for people. We have waiting lists that are extraordinarily long and unmanageable, to be honest. And now you have a minister whose values and the party supports wants to deliver for people. And so the possibilities now, even in Cape Town, with Wingfield and a lot of these open spaces that have become derelict lands, basically, and now has the opportunity to be able to be developed for social housing.
It's going to be a big
people.
social housing project.
I'm not speaking out of turn, I'm sure, but I mean, the fact is that public works has a huge role to play socially, economically. It's such a powerful portfolio, Dean.
And I want to piggyback just on that point, Dean, before you come in. As someone who comes from a rural environment, I'm from the Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and I think I
come from Mckenzie. It's not exactly rural, but it's in a rural province.
I'm from Bonteville. That's very
okay. Nazley and you want to and Dean, I think one of the things that I really want to flesh out is just as Nazley was saying, and as you were saying, many people want to interact and have, the need to find jobs and to interact with public works. And as you've explained, I mean, can you maybe just share from those communities as well, rural communities, which at times might seem so disconnected from, like a Joburg or like, the main cities, the interaction of public works in those particular communities and the work that has been happening there, because there's been work there.
I mean, next week, actually, I'm in Cllr in KwaZulu-Natal, and there we will be handing over a piece of land that we own to the municipality, the Nkandla municipality, in conjunction with the provincial government, that's going to be building a shopping centre for the community there of Nkandla to be able to get access to new grocery stores and so on and so forth. It's going to create jobs and opportunities there. We are also steaming ahead, with the Welisizwe Rural Bridges program, which allows people to access services in rural communities where these roads are often flooded, bringing dignity to them. Obviously, the EPWP program is important also in rural communities. We've done some great work in places like Limpopo and in Mpumalanga as well, working with the provincial governments there, very good relationships with them. So, what we do is not defined to an urban area. It crosses, all of South Africa. If you look at the project preparation we did for the Mckenzie dam project in KwaZulu-Natal, I mean, that's, a massive 20 billion rand project that is benefiting that, community and surrounding communities in unbelievable ways. So, we are not defined just to a certain area of the country. We are everywhere.
And I think what's important is always whatever we do in government, there has to be a return on investment. You don't just do things for the sake of doing it, which leads me to ask you, 1 year in the GNU, Government of National Unity, how has it been?
One of the first interviews I did, I described it like walking into a burning house with a bucket of water. And in some ways, it still feels like that, to be honest. And maybe that's what it's going to be like for the next 4 years. Because, this has never happened in South Africa before. I don't think that all political parties are used to working in coalitions. And so it's always going to be, contested space. But, I think the sooner that, everyone puts the country first instead of narrow party political interests, the better. Because let me tell you something now. If the GNU does not work out, political parties are going to have to account for what they did to try and get other political parties out of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, it's tough, it's difficult. When we arrived, or when I arrived, I mean, I don't think that, there were some people in my department who were particularly pleased about me arriving. But, we've got on with the job, and we've said to people, we've given everyone an opportunity to say, after a year, everyone's settled down. You understand that there's a new way of doing things. And if this is not for you, I will fully respect your opportunity, your decision, to go somewhere else. But we are now getting on with the job. We've got, time is of the essence of us. The voters demand that we deliver, and we're not going to, sort of tolerate games or, people who want to disrupt or distract us.
And I think, Dean, one thing that's interesting for me, and I see it a lot. I think we go on Twitter and we hear there's, this disagreement, there's this fight, there's this that happens at cabinet. And I think at times, Nazley always says it's the tea.
Yeah.
The tea. Everybody wants to get the tea of what's going on and what's happening. But I mean, behind all of that, there's a lot at stake, right?
Yes.
And I think from you, who's on the inside, what really is at stake if this doesn't stay together?
Yeah.
Because I think people can easily just say, well, we're seeing this minister disagree with that one, but there's a lot more at stake than just fights that are happening and selling of newspapers and
hit pieces.
There's a lot that's at stake for all of us in this country.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot at stake for different people for various reasons. So, I think that there's some people who have a lot to lose. There are some people who would like the GNU to fail so they can go back to regular programming, which is,
Steal.
take as much as you can, as quickly as you can. I think that the DA views the GNU as a good thing for South Africa. You will never see a person saying, not particularly amongst us, saying, down with the GNU, down.
Yeah.
We want the GNU to work.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a collaborative effort. It is not a one party who got a majority and we are there as their guests. I mean, that is just simply not true.
Yeah.
And the difference between the first GNU and this one is that the ANC had a majority in 1994. They don't have one now. And so, your people need to learn to collaborate.
Yes.
In my view, there is a number of people on the other side of the aisle who do genuinely want to collaborate. And then I think that there are some people who don't.
Yeah.
And I think that the DA's view is we've got to make it work. We will make it work for as long as possible. We will give it absolutely everything. But we need partners that are as committed as we are to A, the government, and B, the country.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's what will come out in time.
Yeah.
So a department such as yours, and 1 year into it, and you're right, it must have been very difficult to start off with, because a lot of the people that are entrenched in that department are very much entrenched for their own benefit.
Yeah.
Could you tell us, I mean, we're talking about things, it's a safe space. What is one of the big things that you uncovered there that had you not put the brakes in it, we could have actually been in a very difficult position?
Well, I mean, you look at that Telkom Towers disaster, that was just going nowhere. It was going sideways. We jumped into it, and it was actually Cllr's Brink, when he was the mayor of Tshwane, brought that to my attention, and just the money that was being spent, but no one was occupying these buildings. So we commissioned a forensic investigation that has now been complete and waiting for the final report to come. If you look at the mess in the IDT, the Independent Development Trust, 850 million rand of donor money. It wasn't even public money. It was donor money that was going to be spent on this oxygen tender.
Yeah.
That is now complete. And we saved South Africa, I think, from a catastrophic medical disaster that would have been second to none. I think a lot of people would have lost their lives if that had been allowed to continue. And it also would have seen a massive withdrawal of donor funding that go into projects like that. We've also put the brakes on the 6 billion rand in leases that we pay for every year, and we're getting to the bottom of what is going on there, because there are people that are making a lot of money in conjunction with landlords that are ripping off the state.
Yes.
Those people should be sitting in our government buildings. They shouldn't, be sitting on the sidelines. We have a ghost audit employee that is going on, and people had to physically present themselves with their IDs
Just
to show that they were. I even had to do it. I got a phone call, said, "Can you please come present yourself? I'm the minister. Are you coming as well?" But I had to
Be like that.
For people who don't understand this, when we hear ghost employees, what is it?
Yeah,
what does that mean?
So these are people that have either left, died, or somehow been put onto the system that actually don't work for us anymore, but still keep getting paid month after month.
Keeps paying.
So we actually went through from employee A to employee Z and everyone in between and said, you must come and present yourself, bring your ID, and actually prove that you are working here. So we done that. So that audit is now complete, and we'll get the results of that. We also have 400 officials that are currently under lifestyle audits. We deem them to be high risk. And that came about after I walked through the parking lot one day, and I saw a 3 million rand Porsche Cayenne sitting in the parking lot. And I said, whose car is this? And everyone was just, they were silent. And I said, I take it by your silence that this is a staff member. Well, suffice to say, the car wasn't there the next day. But it tipped me off that there was something that was going wrong there. So those lifestyle audits are also coming to a complete. completion. We have also instituted through the SIU an investigation into the top 10 leases by value. I want to know how were they awarded? Were they done correctly? Is it value for money, etc.? So, you've got to balance, trying to hold people accountable, get to the bottom of things, but not just so you can say, hey, look what I've done, but it's so that we stop what is going on and we actually get onto the front foot. So you've got to do two things at once at the same time. You've got to keep moving forward, but you've got to deal with the problems that you have. So it's come at a personal cost to me. I mean, people have ran campaigns against me. There were these fake generated voice notes.
And I heard those ones.
Yeah, they were shocking. They were disgusting.
Very badly done and disgusting.
Online campaigns. I've had threats to my personal safety.
Wow.
This is just what I want to ask you about.
One of the guys who was involved in this IDT mess, he ended up dead.
Whoa.
So it's tough. It's tough when it comes that close to you. But if there's one thing I know is that we've got to break the back of the criminal syndicates that exist in government. And they are everywhere. These are not just one and two individuals. These are actual syndicates that work within government. And so, that's made me unpopular. But you know what it's also done, colleagues? It's also given strength to people in our department who do the right thing. That they know that there's a minister. I don't know who they vote for. I don't really care. But they know that there's someone who's prepared to stand up and do the right thing. And so you know what you do? You actually start to generate a culture where more people start doing the right thing.
And speaking up, right?
Absolutely, because they know that if you're doing it and if you're prepared to lead from the front, and I've always said I'll never ask someone to do something I'm not prepared to do myself. So if I do it, you can do it. And so all of a sudden, you start generating a movement from within that actually people who are doing wrong things, they don't dare come and do it here because they know that they'll get exposed.
And they slowly shift themselves out because they're not part of the culture anymore. The culture's changed completely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's sad.
Dean, I've heard some crazy stories about like construction mafia and people leaving bullets on people's tables and stuff.
To Martin.
Any stories that you come to mind that you want to share?
Well, one of the things that we identified is this construction mafia is a major issue, and it had just gone on unchecked for far too long. So what we decided to do is we decided to host the National Construction Summit in November last year. We brought in police, we brought in National Treasury, and we said to ourselves, we wanted to analyze the situation. And I was actually very fascinated to when we started saying the root cause of this is the 30% set aside for local communities. And everyone said, oh my word, the minister is now trying to stop certain people doing business, and he wants it for only big business and all this and all that. You know what the fascinating thing that came out of that discussion, and is that people started saying, well, you know what? Do you know who the biggest sufferer of this construction mafia is? It's black businesses. Small black construction companies that want to do business are the ones that are being chased out by these thugs and gangsters. So, all of a sudden, I knew that we were on the right track to say you've got two problems. You've got one, how do you involve communities and smaller businesses, number one, and number two, a law enforcement problem. So that's why we brought National Treasury and law enforcement together. And during the summit, we then decided that we were going to take a couple of action steps. One, we were going to review how that 30% set aside is done. We said, let's get back to first principle. The first principle is that we want more people to have more opportunities to be involved in construction. Two, we need to have greater collaboration with law enforcement to be able to do so. So we then devised a charter that would take us forward, which included things like a social facilitation framework, which is now, we put that out for comment. And that will make sure that more communities are involved in more projects so that they actually own their infrastructure and to keep out these thugs and gangsters. We then have set up a partnership with the police where we instituted a national hotline and we work together with them to the extent that 250 people have now been arrested since that summit.
Sure.
I then had a discussion with a major national construction company who said that since the actions that we have taken, they have seen an 80% reduction in lost construction hours, which means, I mean, in simple English, that they were able to build, without being disrupted or without being, hijacked. And so, if you think about it, you don't read about this stuff anymore. I mean, I know there are still pockets, it's still happening. I mean, but it is greatly reduced because of the partnerships and the work that we've done. And all it took was a bit of political will and the willingness to stand up to these guys and say, you will not do that in this country. We will stand up to you, we will fight you, and we will fund you. And that's exactly what we've done.
And you
have to be brave.
The sad reality of what Dean's talking about is the people that suffer the worst are the residents and the poor residents in communities where services are needed most.
Correct.
We've had many situations, but one in particular where a road construction project had to be halted for almost 4 years.
Wow.
Because contractors just wouldn't take up the contract to do the work because they refused to work in certain communities because of...
And then it increases the costs as well.
It increases the
projects.
So now every year the budget goes up, every year the cost of things go up. And so the initial work that was supposed to be done is now reduced as well. So there's more and more money in the pool. But it is absolutely horrid. And if you go through some communities and you wonder, you think, doesn't the councillor work here? Is government not looking after these people? It's far from that. It's a case of that money just can't be spent in a legal manner because of construction mafias.
And let me say that some of these guys are politically connected.
Yeah.
Of course.
And I don't just say that flippantly, I say that knowingly.
Fact.
When I got a call that some guys had been arrested in Pietermaritzburg for intimidating and trying to stop a site, their construction site, I went up to the Camperdown Magistrates Court. We went in there, and this was shortly after the work that we had announced we were doing. It was one of the first sort of major breakthroughs of what we were doing. And then a busload of people arrived to picket and demand the release of these people.
Yeah.
And you know, and you know what t-shirts they were wearing? MK t-shirts.
Yeah.
And now you ask yourself, why would a busload of MK t-shirts wielding supporters arrive to demand the release of 5 people who were trying to disrupt and extort a construction site?
There's a police station. There's a police station in Cape Town where 50% of the staff that works at that police station are in the pockets of a local gangster who is seriously involved in extortion projects. Now, the sad thing is that 50%, half of them are willing participants in it, and the other 50%, who's the partner of the poor officer, is unwillingly a participant in it. And it brings me back to the risk that sits on your life and your family's life, because yes, you're fighting the good fight here, but it's hurting the gangster down at the bottom, and that comes back to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the job. If you want to live a peaceful existence, go and sell ice cream, I guess. You just have to decide, vanilla or chocolate. But it's part of the job. I don't take it lightly. I'm very grateful to the people that look after me on a daily basis. We take precautions, but I think that as I've always understood this. The more you speak about something, and the more you show the public what it is that you are doing and what you're up against, it makes it much more difficult for people to target you.
Very true.
And so that's why when we were facing this avalanche of attack over IDT, when we were really getting into the bowels of it, I called a press conference on a Sunday, much to the dismay of some in my office, and they said, oh, this is a bit risky and I don't know if we should or shouldn't. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and lay the facts out on the table. I'm going to show everyone what is behind this campaign against me. And then it clicked in everyone's minds, and we were able to move forward a lot quicker on some of the institutional changes that we were making in that entity. Now we have a new board that starts next week, which is great.
Brilliant.
And they're going to be able to keep on doing the great job that they're doing to make sure that they provide quality social infrastructure to South Africa, that we build schools in the Eastern Cape, that we build police stations in Limpopo, that we are building clinics in the Free State. That's what we want. We want to make sure that when we build something, it's done on time and on budget, and that there are not sort of money going off here, there, and everywhere.
And you know, Dean, one thing that I'm just, as you're speaking, you know, in the communities, we always hear politicians, gamasela, bayaba, yongindo. It's always just a negative connotation towards about any politician, really, whether you're a councillor, whatever role you find yourself in. But one thing that I think is becoming very clear is that culture and that challenge to the word that all politicians are just here to steal, it's changing, because we've seen now in the GNU, there's new political actors, new parties who have a different culture, different mindset. And I think the fight against this contaminated space is so important. And so how do we, you know, for those maybe who want to get into the space, already in the space, how do you start changing a culture that is so entrenched and systematic, that has gone on for so long that people just
unchecked.
Unchecked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just to add to that, I loved how you spoke about give people the facts. Because oftentimes, and I think this goes to Luyolo's point, politicians don't give you the facts. They, they just speak about it. They make it sound pretty. It's hyperbole. But I think when you lay out the facts in front of people, you're not telling them go left or right. You're saying this is what it is. It makes it easier for them to then say, you know what, actually this minister is making sense, and I understand what he's saying, and support him. Whereas if you just go out there and you wax lyrically, and nobody's, we're going to go back into that trope of politicians are just stealing everything. Correct. And, they eating all the money and stuff. So I think that's a great step forward, is lay out the facts and let people take it from there.
It's so interesting. I get a lot of phone calls from people in political parties that I won't mention who say, listen, publicly we'll disagree with you. But privately, you're doing the right thing. Like, don't stop. In fact, just look over there as well while you are there. So, you can change the minds of people by giving them the facts. And, laying out, we are making this change for this reason.
Yes.
And this is what it'll do. It's not just we're going to do 1, 2, and 3. You've got to tell people why you're doing it and what the benefit is it. So when someone comes and says, no, I want the status quo, people are able to say, but actually, you know what? Why do you not want that thing to change?
Yes.
How do you benefit by that thing staying the same? This guy, this politician, this minister has said, this is the benefit for us, and you are telling us you want us to say the same. And I think that people's minds are shifting to say, you know what, it doesn't have to be like this. Public Works doesn't have to be the Department of Bad Buildings.
Absolutely.
That actually it can be a department that grows the economy, creates jobs, helps on social issues as well, is able to look at important things, able to come up with new policies. That's the kind of thing that we want.
Absolutely, I agree.
I think it's not about a marketing campaign here. I've been, whether active as a councillor or just involved in politics all my life, and I struggle to remember or think who a previous public works minister was in this country. I genuinely do struggle. I couldn't tell you who was the previous public works minister. Now, it's not because I know Dean.
Yes.
It's not that issue. It's a case that Dean has been able to use our policies that we try and share as widely as possible, and it has already shown those policy implementations in government through his portfolio that it's easy for me to turn around and say, Public Works Minister, it's a guy, Dean Macpherson.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And he's only been there for a year versus the other guys that's been there way longer that you still can't remember. Because I think it boils down to the fact, what's your interest in being in that position? Is your interest self-serving?
Correct.
How do I enrich others? Or is my interest actually taking this portfolio and economically developing, socially uplifting, changing the lives of people?
Yeah.
And so it's really great to see that everything that we fought for, everything that we committed to voters throughout all these years actually start being implemented in such a short space of time. It's not often that these sorts of changes take place in such a short space of time in government.
Absolutely.
I remember when Helen became the mayor in 2006, she used to tell a great story that, people in Cape Town after 1 year said, I can't see a difference. My vote was wasted. Terrible. You're not doing anything. And then in the second year, they said, we can see something. It's still not great. You're terrible. We'll never vote for you ever again. In the third, fourth, and by the time you got to the fifth year, they said, boy, I can't remember what it used to be like in 2006.
Yeah.
And now you look back nearly 20 years later, I can tell you that someone who in Cape Town can't even remember what Cape Town was like in 2006 because you only get used to something that works and you can't actually remember what it was like before.
Where you came from.
And I think, this is my view, is that in time to come, in a couple of years, GNU stays together in 2029, people will look back and they will forget what public works used to be like.
Yes.
They will only know the good side of public works and they will forget actually that there was a department of bad buildings.
Yes, yes,
but
yes.
It is incremental and step change that maybe just on a year-by-year basis, it's difficult to tell. Yeah. But when you look at the full timeline in a 5-year period, I think that you'll look back and say, I don't know how the guy did it, but it's a different department now.
Talking about different departments, I'm a little bit of a stalker. I'll admit to you, Dean. I went to stalk you a little bit before knowing that we're going to have you on the podcast.
He got slightly uncomfortable. He was like,
and I saw that last month you hosted an infrastructure symposium.
Yes.
And you spoke about some key projects. You didn't really mention what the key projects are, but you seemed excited that there are some key projects coming up. Can you tell us about them? What are you working on?
So this is the 6th year that the symposium has been held. And I must just say that Infrastructure South Africa is one of the precious gems in this country that must be protected. They do unbelievable work. And I give credit to my predecessors that started it. And, what we've wanted to do in the year that we've been there is we wanted to take it to another level. And so the team there is just really fantastic. And what we sought to do is we wanted to say, how do we make the symposium bigger than last year? We make more pronouncements and we, jack up the book of projects. And we literally have doubled the amount of projects to 258 billion rand that are ready to go. So, that is fantastic. And that is everything from energy to waste to water. Those are the key focal points, ports, rail. Those are the key focal points for us. In fact, last week, I met with the team to look at projects that are going forward to funding, and they are, all focused on logistics and getting this country moving and getting goods moving. And when we take that construction book with us, people marvel at it, and they just said, we didn't know that this is the kind of work that South Africa is doing.
Wow.
And when you start to show investors that, when you start to show different countries that, their view on South Africa changes, actually. So we actually created literally a construction book.
Okay.
And we have a digital version as well. And if you go online, you can actually see the progress of the projects. And the transparency that is allocated to that is incredible, Luyolo. You can see the tender documents. They are online.
Okay.
You can see the progress. It's from start to finish. You can see how much, what is the progress, etc. And that, I think, excites South Africa. And I think that people start to see, man, this thing is good. We're also learning, Angus, from the city of Cape Town, which, is leading the infrastructure spend, it's responsible for 60% of all infrastructure spend comes from one municipality.
Yeah, sure.
While that is amazing, that's also concerning. And we've got to work and to say, how do we get other municipalities to follow suit? To follow suit? And that's why we launched a really exciting project that is called Adopt a Municipality.
Yeah.
We have 4 local municipalities that we're going to work with to provide them with the technical expertise to plan and position those projects to get them off of the ground. And we think in 2 years' time, Nazley, that we'll be able to show the launch of 24 new projects at 3.8 billion rand. Now, that might not sound a lot of money. I mean, you're doing one, Potsdam is 5.2 billion rand. So this is 24 projects at 3.8. But here's the thing. A local municipality's budget is only between 500 and 600 million rand. So these are game changers for those municipalities that would have no possibility of ever launching these projects. We're going to do it with them. And we then want to see how much further we can partner with local municipalities and local government to get infrastructure projects going. Because that is where the real crisis is in South Africa, is municipal infrastructure. And so we've got to help them. And so this pilot project is hugely important, very exciting, and a first of its kind for us. The second fascinating thing we've done on infrastructure is we launched something called a Project Preparation Fund, where we said to SOEs, provinces, municipalities, private sector in conjunction with the public sector, is that you pitch your infrastructure project to us, and we will then make funding available to that in the first bid window, which is 180 million rand. We will pay for it. We will actually do the work, and we will put the money on the table to get your project going. Just in that, offering that 180 million rand, we've got 1.27 trillion rand worth of projects that were laid on the table for us. Now, not all of them are bankable and feasible, but it shows me that South Africa doesn't have a problem of infrastructure pipeline projects. It's got a funding issue. And so that's why I think that South Africa is going to fast move to a situation like where we see in Brazil, where I was last week, where big major infrastructure public projects are 100% privately funded. And that's what we've got to get to. And so that's more work that we are doing.
Can I ask you, Dean, the current BE legislations that has been, to a degree, disasters for our country, how has it affected your department, and how does your department work through those disastrous legislations to actually make a difference?
Well, the thing is, the reality is, we have to abide by the law. And so, we do have to work through current government procurement and the like. What I do want to say, I think that procurement needs a radical overhaul. I think it's cumbersome. I think that just purely, and this is going to be controversial, just purely buying on the lowest price is not a good idea. And let me tell you why. And I've seen this time and again. What bidders do is they bid at the lowest possible price, which is actually below cost, and then day one they start with variation orders. What does that mean? They then say, we mispriced this. It's another 10 million. And then in the next month they come, another 50 million. And so that's why these projects start, at 100 million, and then they end up at 500 or 1 billion, because it was never feasible to begin with. But when you allocate on the 90-10 rule, which is 90% on price, you're asking for trouble when you do that. So we actually have to radically overhaul our procurement laws.
Absolutely.
And we've got to make it about fit for purpose.
Yes.
Can you deliver, and can you do it on a reasonable price? And that's my view. And I'm just, after being in government for a year, I think that we've got to change the way that we procure. Do we want to open the envelope to more people and people who don't normally get an opportunity to bid? Absolutely. But it's also got to be based on competency as well. And that's why I always think, Angus, and I think that Cape Town actually has this right. When Helen looked at in 2006 why the same people only bid for contracts, And she then went to people who don't bid, and she said, "But you're in this industry. Why aren't you bidding?" She said, "It's already decided before he even gets there." And when she opened the procurement process up and made it more transparent, do you know what the net result of that was? More black businesses started doing business with the city of Cape Town because they actually weren't being excluded because they refused to pay a bribe and that sort of thing. So actually, that's how we've got to get more black businesses into the economy, is making it more transparent, making it more open, and allowing everyone to have an equal opportunity. That's how you'll get more black businesses to do business with the state.
So it's a case of they gatekeeping their own in a way. You know, because they're the ones willing to pay bribes. They're the ones willing to pay politicians or for officials or for department when it's, and then they don't even deliver effectively enough.
You know, this thing of procurement, I agree with you. I think it has to be re-looked at.
Very good point.
You know, because I work in the township economy, and that's something I really drive and push because, for example, Gauteng only spends 1% of their budget on township procurement. And when you actually get into it and you start dissecting why is this, because a lot of these small businesses or, SMMEs, they can't compete with bigger businesses who come in at a cheaper price because they have more costs, overheads that they have to do. And so they're always looked over and then go for a bigger company because a bigger company has the money to risk it, and also they have enough for overheads and stuff like that. So in order to give more people the opportunity, I would fully support that we relook at procurement and how does it benefit more people and not just the same people all the time.
The other point I would make, and this is an important one, people don't think about things until they hear a number. The state spends R1 trillion, 1 trillion rand on goods and services. It's the single largest procurer of goods and services in the country. And there are two questions we should ask ourselves. One, does the state get value for money in that? I would hesitate to suggest the answer is possibly no. The second one is that procurement of R1 trillion being used to actually drive economic development and jobs? And if one has to look at the growth numbers, the answer to that is also no. So I don't think that we are being efficient and effective with the way that the state spends its procurement allocations. We should be driving growth in jobs through procurement.
Nazley,
we shouldn't be driving, narrow enrichment.
Nazley said it earlier. Anyone anywhere where money is involved, you got to invest it correctly.
Correct.
And the
you have to have return of investment.
You have to have return investment.
But also, Dean, just out of interest, because, in my community, when one tries to describe what corruption is, right? When you just ask, what is corruption? The first thing you always hear, but the tenders. The tenders are always something to do with the tenders, right?
True.
And so you were saying something interesting earlier on about how you are making it transparent to view where tenders are. And I wanted to hear more about that because I think at times it's very easy at times to just isolate corruption to just one component because it's various components. But I think for many people who ascribe corruption sometimes only just on the tender system because we know it's rigged. We know that people get tenders without having to, go through the proper, adjudication process and, the bid spec committees and whatever. But what is that process you were saying you've now put in your department?
Well, we are launching something. It's come from KwaZulu-Natal. The provincial government is institutionalizing there. It's called e-procurement.
Okay.
So what it effectively does is it seeks to take the human hand out of procurement. And so, when you upload the documents and you put the specifications in, et cetera, a computer program and model looks at this and says, right, what is the best value for money? Does reference checks against companies, are they registered correctly? Is there any flags against the directors? What is their previous record? Is this thing legitimately priced? Is it priced too low? If it's priced too low, get rid of it, etc. And that actually then gives a fair, unbiased, non-human result of what would be in the best, outcome for that particular a bid. Obviously, there will always have to be a human interaction, so it will have to be signed off by someone. But you would have to justify pretty hard why it shouldn't be that outcome, and it should be done differently. But I think that South Africa has also become so immune to corruption. It's so part of everything that we do. And you asked, what are the consequences of corruption for someone in a township? Well, I would argue that life is hard in that township because corruption has actually robbed them of the opportunity to have infrastructure projects that are put there, on time and on budget. It's robbed them from being able to have a job because a company that would have employed them has had to close down because they were shut out, from tendering. Corruption is so pervasive and so, in every aspect of our life that we almost actually can't see it anymore. And that's pretty scary to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, we got to work really hard. And that's why I'm proud of the DA, that we don't, that's not for us. The difference is this. If someone in the DA is caught doing that thing, it's
tickets.
Goodbye. It's goodbye.
Stickers.
There's no reports. There's no commissions of inquiry.
Yes.
It's good night.
There's no swapping of portfolios.
It's out. It's out. And I think that's what the public demand of us.
Yeah.
The public demand us to act that way.
Absolutely. I think that's a great segue because, we, as the DA, the campaign was Rescue South Africa.
Yeah.
That is what the campaign is. And too often political parties campaign on something and then forget about the campaign message and then get into these positions and then just do their own thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you in the hot seat. Tell us, how have you in your department contributed to the mission to rescue South Africa?
Well, as I said, when we first came into office, I wanted to, and by the way, I cursed for a long time about John sending me into public works and infrastructure. I wanted to go somewhere else, by the way. I won't tell you where, but I want to go somewhere else.
It's a safe space. Come on, just say, where did you want to go?
Let me say this. I actually wouldn't choose anything else but public works and infrastructure because we're on a mission now. We're on a mission. We are turning around the department. We are being recognized for that. We are working with professionals, with NGOs, with faith-based organizations. Tomorrow we'll be launching our advisory panel that brings the best and brightest minds. Angus, these people are prepared to work for nothing. They aren't going to get paid. And they're all coming to Johannesburg tomorrow and they are coming on board to bring their ideas to the table. I don't think a couple of years ago anyone would ever have done that with public works because who'd want to taint their name, their professional name, as an accountant or an engineer by having anything to do with public works. So that just shows you the kind of turnaround that we are doing. We are putting public assets at the front of being used for public good. We are all about growth and jobs, and everything in our new APP, our annual performance plan, is measured against growth and jobs. If it doesn't grow the economy and if it doesn't create jobs, it's out. We don't have time to waste around things that do not contribute to changing people's lives. So, I think that when people look back on this year for us in public works, they will say that it was the most consequential year for public works and infrastructure in 30 years in this country. And some people don't like me saying that, but I think that what we have done in 1 year has not been done for many years prior to us. And I'll stand by that fact. And, municipalities and provinces have seen that for their own eyes. I even had a premier of another political party who said, let me tell you something about this guy. They were referring to me. Said, what he is doing, said no one else from any other political party has done in public works. And they're not a member of my party, but they could even recognize that something else is happening, that we are collaborative, that we put the country first. Party stuff comes second and third and fourth. We're all about South Africa. We're all about rescuing South Africa, and we're all about putting South Africa first.
You know what? I said it the other day. We're not here to rescue individuals. We're here to rescue your country. And that's just the bottom line. And people could curse you for that. People can curse because they just don't understand how important this country is to them. Because it's been so tarnished by the past that people have become hopeless. And so, I mean, from our side, my side, I think, Dean, you've breathed life into something like public works. I thought it was something boring.
I love it.
No, I can imagine. I can see it. You don't have any grey hair yet, though, eh? No comment.
We've made construction workwear fashionable in South Africa.
Made construction sexy.
What's that song? We're bringing sexy back.
back.
We're bringing construction back.
Construction back.
I love you in your orange overall, though. I love.
That's not the prison one.
No, not the prison one.
It's just the shirt. It's not the overall.
And hard hats.
But you're doing brilliant work, mate.
you.
And I'm not just saying it because you're sitting here or you're sitting behind a screen that says DA podcast on it. I think 44% of people polled in that poll are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
You're doing a brilliant job. You're giving life to this thing, and your actions, the things that you're doing, you're rescuing South Africa, mate.
Yeah.
Well, I don't do it on my own. I've got thousands of other people, who are working with us. They, maybe they don't support my party. That's fine. But they, I don't do it for myself. I do it for them. I lead an amazing team, and by and large in our department, we've got many people that count on us. Across the country, we've got women and children who are counting on us to provide shelters for them. We've got police officers that are counting on us, to provide a home to them that is closer to where they work. We've got small businesses that are counting on us to get our projects back on track so that they can provide for their families.
Absolutely.
Those are the people that we're doing it for.
Absolutely.
Can I just before Nazley close it off for us? But Dean, you are 40 years. I don't want to expose your age. 40
and not a year older.
But Dean, just one quick answer before we let you go. But 10-year-old you, looking at you right now, what would he say?
Good question. I think 10-year-old me was in 1995. Nelson Mandela had been president for a year. We still hadn't adopted the new constitution. That was still a year away. There was a GNU then, and I think that the 10-year-old me would be saying, to always learn from the past. The past doesn't have to define you, but it offers, road markers on how not to do things, and learn from what was right and avoid what was wrong. And that's why when I take decisions, I often say to my team, and they know this, when they come to me with a decision, go sleep on it. I said, let's go to bed tonight and let's sleep on it and let's come the next day, so that we think about what has happened. We try and read up on, previous mistakes, and we learn from those. And we also learn from what was right. So I think that that's what 10-year-old me would be saying, keep sleeping on it before you make a decision.
So, Dean, for all our viewers watching, listening, where and how can they find you, follow your work, keep up to date with what you're doing?
So I must admit that I'm actually, I have professional Facebook pages, professional Instagram pages. I still do tweet myself, much to the annoyance of my team, but they can go onto Facebook and onto Instagram, onto X, and find me there. We also are now doing a monthly newsletter, which is really cool. You can always check up on our website as well on the work that we're doing. You can also go onto my political page, which is DAKZN. You'll see the work we're doing there in the province. You're always able to find me. I really enjoy when people come up to me in the airport and they have a discussion with me.
Okay, cool.
Or they find me, in the middle seat of a Safir flight.
There we go.
Economy class. They keep putting me. There's only economy class in Safir. I had a guy who once came to me on a Safia flight. He said, so nice to see you in economy class. And I looked around and I said, the whole plane is economy, mate. So, you'll find me most likely on a Safia flight. And I enjoy, connecting with people. I enjoy hearing from people, and I enjoy the feedback that we get.
So just to make sure, it's at Dean Macpherson.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay.
We also know that the last 4 digits of his cell phone now is 1985.
Is his birthday.
No, it's not.
Max is good, yeah.
But you know what? I really think that everyone's got my number. I mean, the funniest ones that I get is like sort of Sunday night at 9 o'clock, and I would just get like, "Hi, how are you?" Like a WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not disturbing you, am I? I'm like, dude, it's 9 o'clock on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Like,
but I can imagine what type of messages you must be getting. Like, because it's not all work related, right?
You're a ward councillor. And
I've been a ward councillor.
And you know this.
I've been a
2
ward
o'clock
councillor.
in the morning. 2 o'clock in the morning.
Sleep mode. You need sleep mode on your
2
phone.
o'clock
No, we're
in
going to
the
sort him
morning.
out.
No,
Okay,
you need sleep mode on your
2
phone.
o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Phone rings and Angus, FOMO, must know everything, answers the phone.
That is true about you.
There we go.
That is true about you.
Because ek soek 'n huis, meneer Mckenzie. I said, at 2 o'clock in the morning, you've decided you want a house. Could this not wait till 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock? I tell you.
I mean, I literally think that, I'll have to go back and look. But I think that after my name got announced on that Sunday night, I think that as the last Macpherson had come out, Angus was like, congratulations, well done. He was like, he does have extreme FOMO.
But you see, Dean's a good guy. He's always been a good guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, because I get some crazy messages sometimes. That doesn't even have to do with work.
Yeah.
Because people can be forward sometimes.
Sneaking
They just,
through the DMs.
Don't sneak into my DMs. Stop it. Leave me alone.
People think councillors not just street lights and water. They think it's marital problems and listen, as a ward councillor,
or some person who's trying to sell me pots and pans on like.
Well, at least they're trying to sell you pots and pans, nothing else.
It's real.
No, I get
Selling
everything.
love.
I get everything. No one's actually asked me on a date, but they can't.
No,
they can't because I'm happily taken.
Okay, cool.
But
Are you taken and he's happy, or taken or happy?
No, we're both happy with each other. We're both happy with each other. But that's the one thing that people have avoided. So we'll keep it that way.
Yeah, I mean, if anything changes, let us know and we'll spill the tea here on this podcast.
And Dean Macpherson, what are you doing tonight?
Don't do that.
Okay, but South Africa must know he's taken.
If it's after 9, I'll be sleeping.
But listen, but Luyolo, you know what they say? It takes a brick to build a home. Estina.
No, I'm not advising. Awesome stuff.
Dean, thank you so much for joining us on this
great.
DA podcast. We've had so much fun getting to know who
I'm the
you
first
are.
person, eh?
We shall not. We shall
I'm the first
neither
person,
deny.
It's a secret.
We
It's
shall
only
not
gonna
deny nor confirm.
It's only going to go downhill from here.
To everybody listening, watching, make sure you like and share this podcast. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Let us know about the conversation, what you liked, maybe what you want to see more of in this podcast. But yeah, this is us. Thank you, Dean.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dean Macpherson.
Woo!